Episode 11, control versus trust, how to spot it in our leadership, and what it really looks like to lead with trust. Leadership feels easier when we're the ones holding the reins. If we can just keep a tight enough grip, nothing will slip through the cracks. And at first, that control feels like security. Projects move forward, deadlines get hit, problems stay contained. But over time, that control comes with a cost. The harder we hold on, the more fragile things actually become. Instead of building stronger teams, we unintentionally create dependency and distrust. We breed fear. Control doesn't build resilient teams. It drains them. And eventually it drains us as leaders as well. I've seen this dynamic play out so many times. We don't drift toward control because we're bad leaders. We drift there because we're under pressure. And our fear of not succeeding drives us to want to be the one with the ball in our hands at all times. When mistakes feel costly and the stakes are high, control feels safer. But here's the paradox. The tighter we hold on, the less trust people have in us. They stop bringing their best ideas. They stop taking initiative, and slowly the relationship shifts. People aren't following us any longer because they trust us, because they feel like they have ownership, because they feel like partners in a greater endeavor, but instead they're just complying to avoid rocking the boat.
That's right. And Eric, what strikes me is that most leaders, they're not controlling because they want to shut people down. They're not trying to shut their teams out. They just really care about their outcomes, right? Their name is on the line or their product is on the line. But even with the best intentions, that control chips away at trust. So how do we recognize when control has taken over? And what does it look like? Help us shift back towards building a culture of trust, because that's where we're able to actually accomplish what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, I love that. So that we understand what's at stake in this conversation for our listeners, for ourselves, because we're practicing this stuff every day, is to remember that as human beings, if we want to accomplish anything great in life, we're going to have to partner with other people.
Yeah.
And that sounds great. So we join teams, we start companies, we build teams, because we, I think, instinctively, intuitively understand that we can do greater things in teams than we can by ourselves. Mm-hmm. But we also know inherently that there is a significant risk involved in trusting the responsibilities of our team, our division, our family, our organization to other people. Why? Because we all have multiple data points through our life of entrusting a part of who we are to others, and they let us down.
Yep.
They hurt us. They burned us. We felt our toes stepped on. We felt cheated. We felt abandoned. We felt misunderstood. And because human partnership is such a delicate pursuit, and because we have so many past experiences of injury, I think what happens is we step into any team dynamic, and this goes for our personal life and marriages or friendships or extended family relationships, also into the workplace. I think we tend to step into these partnerships with some reluctance, reticence, with a kind of skepticism that I don't want to entrust the people around me with too much for fear of how that could negatively impact me.
Yeah.
And so what we have learned over the years is that we have one of two choices. We can either operate as isolated individuals, even though we're in teams. We work with companies all the time where people are isolated, siloed, and everyone's kind of doing their own thing, mm-hmm. right? So we can still work in groups and in partnerships with people and yet really operate from a position of isolation.
Yeah.
The other option is we don't work in teams and we just try to do everything by ourselves. But like I've already said, we know from human history, from sociology, that for us to accomplish greater things, we want to go to the next level. We want to build a bigger business. We want our family to be better and bigger. Then the reality is we're going to have to learn how to partner with other people. And that means we have to learn how to create healthy partnerships that drive collaboration, that allow us to harness the collective genius.
That's right.
And I tell people, I've been telling people for years, as we welcomed 2 children into our family life years ago, as they got older, the expectation was they should make our family more productive, more effective. There should be greater output now that there's 4 of us instead of just my wife and I.
That's right.
But that's a mentality of a shift away from, hey, I've just got to go do my work. I've just got to accomplish whatever I need to accomplish, like this kind of individualized mindset, more toward a recognition that as a family unit together, we can accomplish greater things than any one of us individually can. Right. And so the partnership that leads to collaborative efforts, or the harnessing of the collective genius, which allows all of us to contribute far greater things, which means we're going to produce greater things, all hinges on this quality of partnership that is deeply rooted in trust.
That's right.
Can we develop a reciprocal degree of trust that we're in this together, that we're out for each other's best interest, that we're going to make room for the messiness of the best and worst parts of us, that we're going to leave space for people failing forward, right? So even though as leaders, our reputation is on the line, even though our sense of success is on the line, the reality is to be increasingly more successful is not to move toward isolation, but instead to learn the journey of creating a culture or an environment in which these partnerships that lead to collaboration can grow. But to do that, we have to create an environment where the fabric of that environment, the oxygen of that environment is reciprocally trusting relationships. I'm not even sure if reciprocally is a word, but I like it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah.
Add it to the dictionary. Reciprocally trusting relationships. And we all know this experience, right? Like if we've had a significant other or spouse for any amount of time, we know the feeling of, man, together we're going to do great things. And then all of a sudden distrust enters the picture and it leads to disconnection. We start to lose the partnership. We lose the collaborative energy. We're no longer harnessing the collective genius. And what happens is we get siloed and isolated, and everybody's kind of worried about their own little thing. And we start to lose out on what I think we as human beings are hardwired for, which is how do we operate within social groups that allow us to accomplish something greater together than we could by ourselves. So that's what I think is the highline picture. I'd love to hear kind of what do you connect with and what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that there is a potency that exists when we are able to harness, as you said, that collective genius to accomplish a common vision, a common mission. And when trust erodes and control steps back in, right? You see this, as you said, in marriage all the time, or in significant friendships, in sibling and parent relationships.
Yeah.
When that trust erodes, it comes down, well, I can no longer rely on the potency that we're going to bring together. So now I just have to control the situation by doing it the way that I know how to do it.
That's right.
And we double down on what feels comfortable to us, the way we've always done it, all those things. I distinctly remember in early days of marriage, I was making Kraft mac and cheese, and my husband Drew came in and was like, "You're making Kraft mac and cheese wrong." And he wanted to step in and tell me how to make the Kraft mac and cheese. And I was like, we might make it differently, but the outcome, if you will let me do this and you can go do something else, we're going to accomplish something greater, because you don't have to see the Kraft mac and cheese made exactly how you have made it your whole life, right?
Yeah.
The outcome is going to be the same. And we see that when we are able to risk partnership because it is a significant risk. And it's a more significant risk because we have all been burned and broken and bruised in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So frankly, it's a miracle that any of us are willing to risk partnership.
That's
ever.
right.
But when we are willing to risk it, the bridge that we like to say that allows us to cross that really scary chasm of having to trust, of partnership, having to partner with somebody else, the bridge that we use is trust.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that we can rely on to get us over that chasm.
I love it. So let me jump in and say this, that most of us drift into a controlling posture without even realizing it. I don't think any of us wake up one day and say, you know what, I need to take back the reins. I'm going to control this. I'm going to step in. Right. We think that really that we're protecting outcomes.
That's right. Drew didn't actually want to make the mac and cheese. He just wanted it to taste the way it always tasted.
That's right. That's right. So we think we're protecting outcomes when really we're protecting ourselves from discomfort.
Yeah.
The truth is control is almost always rooted in self-protection. We don't want to be exposed. We don't want to be hurt. We don't want things to fall apart. So we tighten our grip. But the tighter we hold on, is the irony, the tighter we hold on, the less space others have to bring their contribution. If I'm the only one in my household who can make mac and cheese, then that's it.
Yeah.
And nobody else wants to try and make it, right? Because they're afraid they're not going to make it the way that I make it. And so what we do is we end up losing the contributions of other people. Who knows whether maybe those other people are going to make it in a way that's even better or different. Right, they're going to bring their creative thoughts and processes to that mix, and we miss out on what I call the collaborative or the harnessing of the collective genius. That together we are almost always guaranteed to produce something greater than we could by ourselves. Nothing great in the world that we look around at. No products we use, no services we use, nothing that we engage with in the world that's we would just say that's an awesome thing was created, produced, and delivered by one individual human being. It was always a collective, whether it's government, whether it's businesses, whether it's families, whether it's social groups. It always takes a tribe to create something greater than any individual could. So let me say this, and this is where the erosion starts. Instead of others being proactive, bringing their strengths to the table, people start to pull back. Right. They might still be getting the work done, but the trust underneath the work is gone and the benefits of partnership diminish, right? We all know what it feels like to work for somebody who you feel like if I can't do it the way they do it, then it's not worth doing it. Right. And I remember as in a former coaching business, you know, I stepped into the role of doing all of the kind of key teaching at all of our training sessions. I'd taken that baton from my former mentor and I was like, oh, this is great. And people started to get used to me and they were like, oh, Eric's here and he's going to teach. It's going to be fantastic. And we're super excited. And I remember the feeling of starting to say, okay, well, I've got to pass this on to other people. Right? Because if this business is going to grow, if our impact is going to grow, I've got to multiply more teachers. But I remember distinctly starting to talk to some of my proteges. I said, hey, I want you to start teaching some of these sessions. You know, we'll start small and then you'll take on more and more. But I remember distinctly these tensions that I could see in them was, well, Eric, you do it good. You're good at it. You enjoy it. So why wouldn't you just keep doing it? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing for most of us as leaders. We're good at doing something. We know how it's done. We at least maybe enjoy a little bit of doing it. And therefore, why wouldn't I just keep doing this? But the problem is that's where we cut off our ability to entrust other people with new responsibilities, to multiply our efforts. And again, to build something bigger, because if I'm the only one that can deliver on stuff, then that means the productivity is limited to what I can produce.
That's right. We diminish our scope, we diminish our capacity, we diminish the potential for what we could accomplish because I'm the only one now that can do it. I'm the only one that can make the mac and cheese, right?
Yeah.
And the ripple effect of when we lose that trust and we start to lose the potency of our partnership, the ripple effect spreads out into all areas, right? It might have started around one task or one project, but that erosion of trust starts to affect all sorts of other areas. So our conversations get shorter, the risks that our team takes get smaller, and everybody starts moving more cautiously because they don't want to get it wrong. So this is one of those tricky upside down truths of leadership, right? But this command and control leadership, it erodes trust, but we're trying to protect the outcomes. So how can we harness building an environment of trust to actually create the outcomes that we're trying to create through control, right? Like that's the question that we want to get down to.
Yeah, I love that. Now, our listeners are going to hear us refer to one of our toolkit tools called the Trust Code. And we're not going to dive deep in this session into that tool. We've already done that in season 1. Mm-hmm. And so I would strongly recommend to our listeners to go back and listen to that episode on the Trust Code, because in that episode, we unpack what are the core ingredients of building reciprocal trust that drives partnership and collaboration and all that stuff that we're talking about. But let me say this, at the end of the day, I think most of us, we don't actually want to control everything. Right. We don't actually want to be in charge of everything, because I think we begin to feel this sense of we are the bottleneck, right? Everything has to go through us. We're the only ones who can do things the right way. Right. And it becomes overwhelming over time. What we actually want is a team of people bringing their best to accomplish something greater than we could on our own. Right. Yeah. We didn't get married because we thought that our spouse was going to, diminish our value and what we can contribute to the world. We didn't start a business because we thought that would diminish our ability to produce greater things. We didn't build teams because we thought that would cut our efficiency in half. Right. It's because we believe intuitively as human beings, it's in our DNA, that if we learn to partner with other people, actually that's going to expand our influence and impact.
That's right.
So what we want are teams who lean in, bring their best ideas, and move the mission forward without us having to force it. And the only way that happens is if we're willing to risk entrusting more to others. Right. We've got to learn how to build that culture of trust that allows people to fail forward, to learn, to develop, to mature, to grow, to experience transformation, so that we are all together contributing more. When trust is high, people take initiative. When trust is high, they communicate more openly. When trust is high, they collaborate with more creativity. But when trust is low, people shrink back. They do the minimum. They protect themselves instead of pursuing the bigger picture. And that's why at Empower, like I mentioned earlier, we often emphasize this tool called the Trust Code, because trust grows when people consistently feel seen, heard, and valued. Again, please go back to season 1 and listen to that episode. These are not abstract ideas. These are practical handles that offer us daily signals so that we as people can use to decide whether to lean in or to pull back. When the ingredients of trust are present, people lean in. When they're not present, people shrink back or pull away.
That's right. And as people, like you said, we have like this inner radar that it goes off for us, whether this is somebody that we can trust. Do I feel seen, heard, and valued in this context? Or is this a context that I need to pull back and protect myself? Right. And I need a guard, right? But that shift as leaders, learning how to start instilling and building a culture where people feel seen, heard, and valued is what is going to make the difference, because control might get us through the day, right? Holding the reins really tightly might get the job done in the short run, but partnership, effective partnership, is actually what's going to get us where we want to go.
Yeah.
And that requires trust.
Yeah. I love the old African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
It's powerful, right? It's so simple, but I think we know this. And the question that many leaders are wrestling with is, great, then how do I create those types of partnerships, right? And we're not talking about a flat hierarchy in a company. We're not talking about everybody being on equal footing. We're talking about within any structure, right? Whether it's with people on our teams, whether it's peers in our workspace, whether it's the people that lead us, it is that reciprocal trust that actually drives the quality of partnerships that allow all of us to bring more of who we are to the table to accomplish greater things. So, Don, let's do this. Let's take a moment to talk a little bit practically from our own experiences. Where have we seen this? Where have we butt up against this? What have we learned on our journey as we've been in these different environments that either cause us to lean in or cause us to pull back?
Yeah, man, I am actually living this out in real time. And you and I have had a lot of conversations processing through this, but just like I'm sure any of our listeners that are here with us right now, I have experienced a significant level of broken trust, of betrayal, of relationships, whether those are personal or professional, that have left me wounded. And specifically professionally, I have walked through a season where through no fault of my own, my career was in some ways ripped out from under me and I had to start over again, and I'm sure there's even people listening that can appreciate that experience, have gone through something similar.
100%.
And so what did I decide to do? I decided to start my own business because I was like, I'll be damned if I'm going to let somebody else determine my success, my value, how far I can go, what I can accomplish, what I'm able to make financially, right? I'm not going to let anybody else hold me back again. So I'm going to start my own business where all I have to rely on is me, myself, and I.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I kicked ass. I did really good. I, for all intents and purposes, succeeded until, guess what? I got to the end of myself, because there is a practical reality that I alone am only able to accomplish so much. Yeah. And so what did I do? Well, first I hired an assistant, and that was really scary, literally having to trust pieces of my business to somebody else. And then I started building teams. And then what did I do? I got involved with Empower, and I was like, this feels so aligned that I am willing to risk, which again, feels in some ways like an idiotic risk to take again, but I'm willing to risk partnering professionally with somebody else because it feels like I'm going to be able to accomplish more than I can do by myself. And that risk at this moment feels worth it. Right. And I've told you, Eric, I'm like, it is a miracle that I'm even willing to take that risk again. And it says a lot about the Empower culture and what you have been able to build and the type of partnership that together we have fought for. Because even 6-9 months ago, I would have said, there's no way I'm going to like step into that type of partnership with a company again.
Yeah.
It's too risky. It's too dangerous. It's too scary.
And just to kind of like flesh out the risk on your side is you get paid by this company. Yeah. So in some ways your financial well-being is tied now to this partnership. You're not the boss of the company. Right, where you were the boss of this other company that you started. So you're not even the boss. Like you don't get to call the shots. I mean, you've got me to deal with and contend with, right? And then we've got other team members. So it's like, oh my gosh, now I'm again in this community, this social group of people who are fighting to believe we can accomplish something so much greater together than we can alone. However, the risk is real. Yeah. The risk is real because at any point I could do something stupid and blow up the company, or I could get mad about something dumb and like many leaders do, just be like, Don, it's not working. You're out of here. And then all of a sudden you're like out on your own again. And that's the tension in all human dynamics that we are wrestling with, which is I want to lean in. And I want to be in an environment where I can trust the partnership to sustain through the pressures and the challenges of life.
That are
And that
going
we're
to
going
come
to,
inevitably.
and that they are going to come, that we're going to get the breakthroughs that we need. And that's only going to, if we do those things well, lead to greater trust and connection.
That's right.
That allows that bridge to grow even stronger so that we can then endure the next wave of challenges, difficulties, pressures that we're all under.
That's right.
So let me turn the table. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but it just seems appropriate, and I want to share it delicately. This may be the first podcast that we've recorded that I may shed a tear on.
Oh, okay, let me lean in.
Yeah. So as you know, Dawn, and some of our listeners may have heard some of this story at times, but I started Empower Coaching with two business partners, who were friends, who we did life together, and there was this beautiful partnership, and we each brought very different strengths to the table. And in those early years, it was like, I think that's in many ways what made Empower Coaching so powerful and why it grew so rapidly, because clients were seeing how we operated and they were captivated by this quality of partnership.
Yeah.
That was deeply rooted in this reciprocal trust and that we fought for dearly. But like we said, the pressures of life and the challenges and the unexpected twists and turns definitely hit us as individuals, but also as a business.
Yeah.
And under all that pressure, I remember this distinct feeling of like, wait, hold on. Trust is eroding here.
Mm-hmm.
Trust is eroding. Now, if you want to go back and assess it all, we all tried our best and we all made lots of mistakes. That's just part of the human journey. But I remember distinctly feeling like, whoa, my business partners are communicating distrust to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember feeling like, oh, that's not okay. We can disagree. We can fight over things. We can wrestle through a lot. But when I started to hear language that communicated distrust toward me, that I had their best interest in mind, that I was willing to lay my life on the line for their well-being, that everything I was doing was for something bigger, not just for myself. When that was I remember thinking, okay, we are now standing over this massive chasm risk.
Yeah.
On a bridge that is starting to feel really wobbly and fragile.
Yeah.
And it was by far one of the most heart-wrenching experiences of my life, where they made a decision to say, there's that bridge is not strong enough for us to feel secure in continuing in this partnership. And I remember thinking, this is crazy. This is what I do for a living. I coach leaders and organizations and teams through this process because you and I both know, Dawn, that businesses do not succeed and fail on the basis of their product or their service or their financial outlooks. That's all a factor. But the main thing is the people in leadership and their ability to partner together through those tough times.
That's right.
And so it rocked my world. We separated in our partnership, which broke my heart. And I spent probably a year after that, just, obviously reeling from that experience, but I've still got a business to run. I've still got clients to go and attend to. I've still got things to do, books to write and videos to create. And I just remember thinking like, what in the world? And I remember feeling this tension of, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
I don't want to entrust other people with anything that where at any moment they can just leave. Yeah. And I'm left holding nothing in my hands except myself, right? So it's like, and I don't want that. But at the same time, and obviously I went through therapy, and my amazing wife was an incredible partner through that process. And I'm just sitting there, spent a year thinking like, okay, all the ways I screwed up and failed and didn't lead well and beating the snot out of myself. But there was this one thing that kept emerging, which is, I cannot abandon this core conviction that by myself, I'm so limited in what I can do. And the vision and mission of our coaching business is so big that I, in and of myself, won't even come close to scratching the surface of that vision or mission.
Right.
If I isolate and do things on my own. And when you first came onto the team, and when Aura first came on the team, and I mean, I remember I may outwardly been like, yeah. I'm so glad for your team, your team help and your partnership. But I remember emotionally feeling like, I can't do this again. But that's the tension. Like, we've all been wounded. We've all been beat up. We've all lost relationships. We've all had those bridges burned. And you just think, gosh. And yet at the same time, the question is always in front of us. Am I going to choose to do this thing alone, or am I going to choose to fight for the thing that I believe is going to lead to a far greater outcome? And so I had to put my chips back on the table. And at an emotional level, choose to say, am I going to entrust myself appropriately, of course, and it's not all at once, but am I going to entrust myself to these new team members, and am I going to create an environment for them to entrust themselves to me?
That's right.
And it wasn't easy, and we've had to have a lot of hard conversations, but because I am so convinced that this is the way we're designed to operate and flourish, that I remember when I was talking to an individual who has been talking about, jumping into some form of partnership with our coaching business. And he heard a little bit about my story. And he said, Eric, I don't understand. Why do you keep fighting to build things with other people? You could just be a high-level boutique coaching operation, just have a remote personal assistant on the other side of the world that you never have to engage with. And because you're so good at what you do, and you'll make great money, and you can just do that for the next 15, 20 years and retire happily. And I said, because the benefits of what I have experienced in partnership with other people so far outweigh the pain and the risk of what happens when those partnerships don't work out. That I feel compelled to keep fighting for it. And I feel compelled to keep partnering with clients who say, we believe in this. And we believe it's worth it. We're not ready to give up on this thing called human partnership yet. And so, and that's partnership at any level, across any part of our lives. If people are willing to fight for it, I say, you know what? I haven't figured it all out, but I can sure tell you it's worth it. It's worth it.
Whew, yeah, that's a journey we are literally walking through right now for our listeners. So pulling back the curtain a little bit, but we highly value authentically sharing how we flesh these tools out for ourselves. So here's one thing I want to say, though, because we brought up the bridge of trust, right? And how you found yourself on that bridge with your partners, and it was starting to erode, like that Indiana Jones sensation where the planks are disappearing in real time. And I want to say this, we have to take the steps to build the bridge that will support the appropriate amount of trust, right? So we can't take a baby bridge that we're just starting to build and pour in a huge weight on top of it, right? Because that bridge is going to crumble. So there's, in a sense, like we have walked and you kind of laid that out for our listeners, that we have built and strengthened and increased the size of our bridge in partnership over the course of a few years. That you have to do that in any capacity for that bridge to be worthy of holding the strength of the pressures that you're going to put on it.
That's right. Here's some great practical examples.
Yeah.
The fact that we're doing this podcast together
Yeah.
is me saying, hey, to the world, Empower Coaching is not just Eric Pfeiffer, it's Don Neldon.
Uh-huh.
That's me entrusting the brand, the reputation, and all the while knowing that you could at any moment decide, I don't want to work with Empower Coaching anymore. And now the world thinks Empower Coaching is about Dawn as well. And it's actually bigger than both of us. But the point is, like, entrusting you here, entrusting you to work with some of our core clients, like entrusting you to start and build parts of our business that I don't have the time and energy to build. And to say, no, Dawn's fingerprints are going to be on that. Dawn's creativity is going to be in the primary expression. Of course, we have the shared DNA. Of course, we have who we are as a business, that we all subscribe to, our core values. All that is there. But to entrust you to own parts of our business, not only has taken our business to another level over the last year or so, but it also has been far more enjoyable to partner together than to do things on my own. And it also communicates to the world. It's a constant signal to the world and to our clients to say, yeah, it's hard to build this kind of stuff. Yes, there's a lot of risk involved. No, it doesn't always work. I mean, what's the divorce rate in America right now? It's not pretty. It's high.
Yeah.
But why do people get married again and again and again?
Yeah.
Because deep inside of us, we know that to do greater things in life requires that we partner with other people. And so rather than questioning whether partnership is worth it, what we should be doing is paying far more attention to what you're saying, which is, how do we build these bridges? And all I can say is I'm so grateful for all those who've invested in me and our opportunity to build a toolkit and a leadership operating system that equips people with the practical handles and tools so that they know how to give them and their partnerships the best chance of sustaining and succeeding, even in the midst of great challenges and pressures.
That's right. So give us some baby steps then. How do we as leaders start to build those bridges of trust with the people that we are longing to partner with? What are some practical things that we can do, right? Because this idea of trust can feel so ambiguous and amorphous. And yet what I love about our toolkit is, no, here are some handholds along the way to get you going.
Yeah, I love that.
The practice.
I love that. I'm gonna divert a little bit from our notes because I've got some things I want to share that are coming to mind. Let's go back. Let's just utilize this bridge imagery, right? You have two people standing on either side of a chasm. That chasm represents risk, the risk of partnership. We could fall in, get hurt. And so we need this bridge. So the first order of business, I think, for us in any partnership of our life, in any relationship, is to first ask the question, what kind of risk are we taking? Right? The risk that I take in engaging with the person checking me out at the grocery store.
Sure.
That they're going to give me back the change after I hand them cash, and I'm taking the groceries. Like, that is an exchange that requires a form of partnership. But the strength of that bridge doesn't have to be super, super strong, because it's a transactional thing, and I know there's a manager somewhere I can talk to right away who's going to sort it out if this person doesn't give me my change back or doesn't let me take the groceries that I just paid for. Right. So the first order of business, I think, is really reflecting on what is the strength of that bridge that is required for this particular engagement, this form of partnership, right? Because we have really kind of what I would call light partnerships, and then we have really heavy partnerships, which, partnership of marriage, partnership in business, and there's everything in between. So number one, I think, is for our listeners, is to just for a fun exercise, to just consider what's one partnership in your life that you think is important, and to ask the question, what is the risk of that partnership? What am I risking to partner with this person? Number two, therefore, how strong does that bridge need to be? And then number three, what does it look like to build that bridge? And we have to build from both ends, right? It's a reciprocal trust. And then to ask a simple question, okay, how do we build that bridge? And by building that bridge means we have to create an environment of reciprocal trust. So people, again, can go back to the session on the trust code and learn more about that. But here's what I would say to people. That bridge is the way that we communicate to other people the priority of human connection in all engagements.
Mm-hmm.
The priority of human connection. What I mean by that is, if we're not careful, we get into the game of what I call, we become users of one another.
Yeah.
Right? It's so contractual that it's like, I want what I want from you. As long as you give me what I want from you, then we're all good. And if you don't, then we have a problem. But it's very user oriented. I want to get what I want from this partnership. Mm-hmm. Where real healthy partnership at any level is an understanding that we are prioritizing human connection. We are prioritizing the other person as a human being. Yeah. We are prioritizing a win-win mentality. We win together, we lose together. In other words, I'm willing to tie my best interest into what's in your best interest.
Yeah.
Right? Which moves us away from that user mentality. And in the workplace, because relationships are difficult, I think many of the organizations we operate in, within or work within have defaulted to what they call the corporate culture, which then leads everybody just to feel like they're a cog in the machine. They're just a number on the payroll. And as long as the boss is getting what they want out of you, then everything's going to be okay.
Right.
But I think we have to make a fundamental paradigm shift that bridge is not contractual primarily. It is an opportunity for human connection. If I can either engage with that person at checking me out at the grocery store from the perspective, it's contractual. All you represent to me is I get my groceries and I get to go on my way. There's no partnership there.
Sure.
It's a transaction. But if I see that other human being and say, this engagement needs to be mutually beneficial, so I'm going to remember that's a human being standing across from me. I'm going to engage with them as a human being. I'm going to prioritize that human connection, that you're more than just somebody checking me out for my groceries. You're more than just somebody handing me a Starbucks. You're more than just somebody, who I might do a deal with. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to prioritize the human element, that I want to engage with you at that level. When we take on that perspective, we begin to operate in a way that communicates trustworthiness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's the beginning of building the bridge from our end. If it's transactional, there's no trust that needs to be built, and there's no partnership that can happen.
Yeah.
Right. And you and I both know, we've been married long enough to our own spouses, of course, that we know the feeling of when there's that disconnect and marriage begins to feel transactional.
Yeah.
How do I get what I want?
Oh, yeah.
And then you need to fight for what you want, but I'm really mostly concerned myself, rather than when we're most connected is because we're prioritizing the human connection. We win together, we lose together. Our best interest is tied to each other. And that goes for marriage all the way down to checking out groceries at the grocery store, because whenever we're engaging with another human being, we're either going to communicate trustworthiness, I'm safe, you can lean into me, or I'm going to communicate untrustworthiness, transaction, which means you're going to lean out.
Yeah. And the only reason that incredible risk is worth engaging in is because synergistically something happens when we engage in that partnership, right? There's a potency, like when you think of your marriage, or you think of your friendships, you think of your work relationships, when we are operating at that level of partnership, right? Where we're fighting for the mutual benefit, we're fighting for something greater than ourselves. There is that sense, there is a reality that we might not be able to fully put language to that says we can do more together.
Yes.
And that is why the risk is worth it.
That's right. So here's the way that I've learned to say this. In human partnership, 1 + 1 is not 2.
Yeah.
It's 10. It's 10.
Mm-hmm.
1 + 1 is not 2 in human partnership. It's 10. There's an exponential power and ability to accomplish when people begin to partner together. So in any team or business, when people feel like my business is not running the way I want, the teams of people are not, it's almost always because there's no 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. It's isolation.
It's one and
One person
one.
doing what they're doing, one over here, one over there, one over here, one over there, rather than when there is, we start to create this culture of partnership and collaboration. It's 1 + 1 = 10. 1 + 1 + 1 = 50. The math doesn't make sense, but that's what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And that's why it's worth fighting for.
That's
I
right.
love it. All right. Oof, we've got a long time. I love this conversation for our listeners. This is right at the very core of everything we're fighting for as a coaching business, because we do believe that people are the engine of business, of family, of everything in culture and society. And it's how people operate individually and collectively that makes or breaks everything that we're fighting for. To our listeners, thanks for joining us today. If this episode has helped you name the tension between the controlling version of yourself and the trusting version of who you are as a leader, share it with another leader who needs the same clarity. Again, go back to the first season and listen to that episode on the trust code, dive deeper, and learn how to build a culture of trust within those relationships that matter most. Make sure you've subscribed, because next week we're talking about pace. Pace. How to lead ourselves and our teams with sustainable rhythms so that we don't burn out chasing greater productivity. Until next time.